Let me tell you something that most men never realize until it's too late. When a younger woman smiles at an older man, it's not always about attraction in the way you think. It's something much deeper, something almost spiritual. She's not smiling at your age. She's smiling at your energy. Because real women, emotionally mature women, can sense when a man has done the inner work, when he's no longer trying to prove himself to the world. That smile is her subconscious saying, I feel safe in your presence. And the tragedy is, most older men completely miss that. They're too busy thinking they've lost their edge, that youth equals power. But what if I told you the real power begins hour after youth fades? What if I told you that your calm, your silence, your lived experience, those are the very things younger women crave in a world obsessed with loudness and validation? You see, women today are surrounded by men chasing attention, addicted to approval, desperate to impress. But when she meets a man who doesn't need to be seen, who already knows who he is, she feels something rare. She feels peace, and that's why she can't stop looking. This video is not about age, it's about awareness. Because once you understand the psychology behind that smile, you'll stop seeing it as flirtation and start recognizing it as admiration. Stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change the way you see women, attraction, and yourself. By the time we're done, you'll realize she's not smiling at your looks. She's smiling at your presence. And when you finally understand that, you'll never chase attention again. You think she smiled because she found you attractive, right? Because your salt and pepper hair caught her eye, or your fitted shirt hinted you've still got it. But that's not it. Attraction isn't just about looks. It's about energy, and the energy you give off as a man who's lived, who's lost, and who's learned is completely different from a man who's still trying to prove himself. Younger women can feel that energy instantly. It's not about physical beauty. It's about emotional gravity. You have something most men her age don't. A sense of control, peace, and self-awareness that can't be faked. That's what makes her smile. When you walk into a room, you don't chase attention, and that alone creates it. You don't need to be loud. You don't need to perform. Your energy is already speaking for you. Because energy doesn't lie. It's the invisible language of human connection. And younger women, whether they realize it or not, respond to that quiet power. They sense when a man is sure of himself, when he doesn't seek validation, when he's past the stage of competing for approval. You've stopped needing the world to tell you who you are. That's what they notice. That's what they find magnetic. Here's the thing most older men miss: women aren't attracted to perfection. They're attracted to certainty. They crave that unshakable feeling that comes from a man who knows who he is. When you carry yourself like that, every gesture, the way you hold your coffee, the way you listen instead of rush to speak, becomes magnetic. Because she's not seeing a man who's trying to impress her. She's seeing a man who's already impressed with life itself. That's rare. And here's what makes it even more powerful. It's unconscious. You're not trying to impress her. You're just being. That's the difference between a boy and a man. A boy performs. A man embodies. You've earned your calm through experience, through failure, through rebuilding yourself from the ground up. Every scar, every mistake, every heartbreak, it's refined you. It's stripped you of the need to chase approval, and that's what makes you so different. Younger women are surrounded by men who are desperate to be noticed, to be chosen, to be admired. But when she meets a man who doesn't play that game, a man who's already chosen himself, something inside her softens. Because finally, she feels she can let her guard down, she can be feminine, she can relax. You don't trigger her defense mechanisms because you're not competing with her energy. You're anchoring it. You become the calm in her storm. It's not dominance, it's, as Prison says, The way you make her feel safe without saying a word. The way your energy tells her, I'm not here to take from you. I'm here to see you. That's why her smile lingers a little longer than you expect. It's not superficial. It's spiritual. It's her recognizing something she's been searching for but rarely finds. A man who is whole. And maybe you don't even see it. Maybe you've started to doubt your worth because the world worships youth. You look in the mirror and see time passing, but she looks at you and sees a stepped. She sees someone who's walked through life's fire and come out with a heart that's still capable of warmth. You've become the embodiment of calm confidence, and that's something no filter, no gym body, no flashy car can replicate. You see, energy is contagious. When your energy says, I'm at peace with myself, she feels peace around you. When your presence says, I don't need to impress, she feels safe to just be herself. That's what most men never understand. Attraction is not a transaction, it's a resonance. She's responding to the frequency of your groundedness, not your appearance. You remind her of what real masculinity feels like, not loud, not forceful, but steady, intentional, and safe. So when that younger woman smiles at you, don't overthink it. Don't brush it off as coincidence or politeness. Recognize it for what it is, a mirror, a reflection of the energy you've cultivated over years of becoming who you are. She's not smiling at your face. She's smiling at your essence. And if you truly understood what that means, you'd stop doubting yourself. You'd stop comparing yourself to younger men and realize they're chasing what you already embody. Because your age didn't take your power away, it distilled it. It turned noise into silence, chaos into clarity, insecurity into grace. She doesn't smile because she pities you. She smiles because your energy reminds her of something the world's forgotten. What real presence feels like. And maybe it's time you remembered that too. You know what's truly magnetic about an older man? It's not the way he dresses or the way he talks. It's the way he handles life. It's the stillness in him that younger men haven't learned yet. The emotional calm that comes from surviving chaos without losing himself. When a younger woman sees that, she feels something she doesn't even have words for. It's not excitement. It's not lust. It's peace wrapped in confidence. And peace is one of the most attractive energies a woman can feel. Younger men are full of adrenaline. They rush, they react, they want to win, they want to prove. But older men have already played those games and lost enough times to understand that not every battle is worth fighting. That wisdom changes everything. It softens the edges of your energy. It makes you walk differently, talk differently, listen differently. You become grounded, not because life broke you, but because you finally understand what really matters. That's the energy she's drawn to, the kind that doesn't chase, the kind that observes, that decides, that knows. Maturity is magnetic because it feels safe, not safe in a boring way, but safe in a way that allows her to finally exhale. Think about it. In a world full of instability, emotional games, and confusion, peace is the new luxury. And older men radiate it naturally when they've done the inner work. They've seen enough to not get pulled into every emotional storm. They know when to speak and when silence is stronger. That awareness, that control, it's intoxicating. Because it gives her something she rarely experiences, a sense of grounding. A mature man doesn't overreact. He doesn't crumble under rejection. He doesn't need validation every hour. That self-containment makes him powerful, because the one thing women can sense more than looks or wealth is vast emotional security. The kind of man who doesn't lose himself in the moment. The man who can hold space even when things get messy. That's the kind of man she respects, admires, and yes, smiles at. When a younger woman sees an older man who carries himself with that unspoken authority, not arrogance, but quiet strength, it does something to her. She feels protected, not controlled, guided, not dominated. She feels like she can be feminine again, not because he demands it, but because his energy gives her permission to. That's what maturity does. It restores balance. It's masculine energy that's not trying to prove it exists. It just surfaces. And what's fascinating is that this maturity isn't about age alone. It's about perspective. Some men grow older but never grow wiser. They age, but they don't evolve. True maturity comes when a man learns from his experiences instead of repeating them, when he stops reacting and starts responding, when he's not triggered by every little thing because he knows who he is. That self-awareness is what she finds magnetic. It's the energy of a man who's at peace with his past. And that peace makes him powerful in the present. She can feel the difference between a man who's chasing validation and a man who's centered in purpose. One drains her energy, the other elevates it. When you carry the energy of maturity, you don't pull her into chaos, you pull her into calm. You don't demand her attention, you command it. And it's not through dominance, but through the consistency of your presence. That's why younger women are drawn to older men who've evolved. Because maturity is not just attractive, it's ever rarer. It's the result of pain processed, ego dissolved, lessons learned. You've walked through heartbreak, disappointment, and failure. And instead of becoming bitter, you became better. That transformation gives you a kind of inner power no one can fake. You no longer seek control over others because you've mastered control over yourself. And in that mastery, something beautiful happens. You become emotionally predictable in a world that thrives on unpredictability. You become dependable, not because you're boring, but because you're balanced. You're no longer addicted to drama, you're devoted to peace. That's the energy she's responding to when she smiles. She's not smiling at your body. She's smiling at your composure. She's not impressed by your words. She's moved by your emotional intelligence. So when you wonder why younger women seem to be drawn to you, remember, they're not chasing age, they're chasing God's alignment. They're drawn to the version of you that finally understands himself. The version that's not reactive, not desperate, not loud, but firm, clear, and calm. The version of you that's learned that maturity isn't about what you've survived. It's about what you've Warazeka's absorbed. And maybe the reason she smiled wasn't because she wanted you, but because, for a second, she recognized something she deeply craved within herself: peace, strength, and emotional depth. She saw what it looks like when a man has finally come home to himself. And that is the most attractive thing in the world. Silence has power, but most men don't know how to use it. They fill every quiet space with noise, with words, with explanations. Because silence makes them uncomfortable. They think speaking more means leading more, but the truth is the opposite. A man's silence, when it comes from confidence, speaks louder than anything he could ever say. And that's something younger women pick up on instinctively. When a younger woman interacts with an older man, she's not just listening to what he says, she's observing what he doesn't say. The way he pauses before responding, the way he lets moments breathe, the way he doesn't rush to prove a point. That stillness communicates something far more powerful than words ever could control: self-mastery, presence. And that presence feels safe, because silence reveals security while over-talking reveals anxiety. You see, most men use words to build an image, to appear intelligent, dominant, desirable. But an older man who's evolved doesn't need to construct an image. He's already lived enough to know who he is. He doesn't chase validation through words. His energy speaks first, his silence speaks second, and his words, when he chooses them, carry weight. It's not just what he says, it's how little he needs to say that makes her pay attention. Younger women are surrounded by men who talk endlessly but say nothing. Promises, plans, compliments, noise, and then you appear quiet, grounded, observing. You don't rush to fill the silence. You don't compete for attention. You let her energy come to you. That's when she feels something different. It's not intimidation, it's fascination. Because your silence creates mystery, and mystery awakens curiosity. But this kind of silence doesn't come from arrogance or disinterest. It comes from has inner peace. It's the silence of a man who's no longer reactive. You've lived enough to know that you don't owe the world constant explanation. You understand that attention is earned, not demanded. And that patience, that ability to wait, makes you powerful in a world where everyone rushes to be heard. Philosophically, silence is a mirror. It shows others who they are. When you're silent, people reveal themselves. Their insecurities surface. Their true nature comes out. That's why it's such a dominant trait. It's not aggression, it's presence. A woman feels that deeply because silence in a man says, I'm listening, I'm observing, I'm choosing what matters. It's emotional intelligence in action. That's what younger women crave without realizing it. Not a man who over-explains, but a man who understands without reacting. When you sit there calm, composed, and steady, while everyone else scrambles to be noticed, you separate yourself from the noise. You become the grounding force in the room. She feels it instantly. She feels her own energy start to calm around you. That's the emotional safety women talk about but rarely find. It's not about control. It's about composure. And the beauty of it is, silence makes space for truth. It invites her to speak, to open up, to feel heard. Most men interrupt, few listen. But you've learned that real connection isn't built by talking. It's built by being present. That's why your silence feels different. It's not cold, it's comforting. It says, I'm here, you can be yourself. And that's something every woman desires more than compliments or promises. To feel safe enough to be seen. Older men who understand this don't need to chase conversations or prove their worth. Their silence creates gravity. Their words become deliberate, intentional, and when they finally speak, people listen. Because it's not just sound anymore, it's substance. Your silence gives meaning to your voice. It's the balance between restraint and expression that gives you emotional authority. In relationships, this kind of energy changes everything. When a man can hold silence without panic, without needing constant reassurance, he becomes emotionally grounded. He becomes the calm in her chaos. And that's when her attraction deepens. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't have to say. So understand this: your silence is not weakness. It's not emptiness. It's power contained. It's what separates the man who needs attention from the man who commands it effortlessly. It's what makes her lean in closer, not because you're performing, but because you're radiating something real. Confidence without noise, certainty without ego. And in a world obsessed with volume, your silence becomes your voice. It tells her everything she needs to know. That you're not here to compete, you're here to connect. That you've mastered not just your emotions, but your energy. And that kind of man, the one who leads with quiet strength, is unforgettable. So the next time you find yourself in conversation, remember, you don't always need to respond. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause, because silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything is. You know what's fascinating? Most older men walk around believing that age has made them invisible. They think the world only notices youth, the fresh faces, the loud energy, the ones constantly trying to prove themselves. But what they don't realize is that age doesn't make you disappear. It makes you undeniable. Because with time comes something youth can't fake: depth, presence. The kind of authority that isn't shouted, it's felt. You've lived enough to understand that life isn't about constant noise. You've failed, rebuilt, loved, lost, and learned. That experience has shaped you into something rare. A man who no longer seeks approval because he's already met himself. That kind of man doesn't need to chase attention. He naturally commands it. And the irony is, the moment you stop needing to be seen is the exact moment the world starts noticing you. You see, what makes an older man powerful isn't that he's lived long. It's that he's there lived consciously. He's taken his lessons seriously. He's turned pain into understanding, mistakes into wisdom, and heartbreak into clarity. That's what gives your energy weight. Younger men have enthusiasm, but older men have essence. You don't just walk into a room, you change the temperature of it. That's not arrogance. That's presence earned through self-awareness. You've probably noticed that people listen differently when you speak. It's because your voice carries experience. It doesn't come from theory, it comes from living truth. Younger women sense that immediately. They feel the difference between a man who talks from ego and a man who speaks from experience. That's why they pay attention, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're not trying at all. Age gives you a certain quiet dominance. It's the calmness of a man who's seen how easily life can shift, how fragile things really are. You don't waste energy on drama or chasing temporary highs. You've learned that peace isn't found in control. It's found in understanding what's worth controlling. That detachment gives you a power most people never reach. It's not indifference, it's discernment. You've become selective with your energy. And that's exactly what makes it valuable. Here's something most men don't grasp. Confidence built on youth is temporary, but confidence built on wisdom is permanent. When you're young, your value comes from potential. When you're older, your value comes from proof. You've walked through storms and survived. You've watched doors close and still found a way to open new ones. That resilience becomes part of your aura. You carry it without even realizing it, but women, especially younger ones, feel it deeply because it's not something they see every day. In a world obsessed with image, you represent substance. And that contrast is magnetic. It's not that younger women are seeking a father figure. They're seeking an anchor. They want to feel stability, reliability, groundedness, the things that come naturally to a man who's already outgrown chaos. Your calm is rare. Your steadiness is rare. Your refusal to chase trends, to prove worth through appearance, that's what makes you stand out. But here's the tragedy. Too many older men reject their own power. They try to compete with youth instead of embracing wisdom. They dye their hair, they imitate younger behavior, they shrink themselves to fit into a world that secretly craves the very thing they're running from. Maturity. They forget that real attraction isn't about blending in, it's about standing apart. You don't need to chase relevance when you are relevance. The world may glamorize youth, but it bows to wisdom, because youth can entertain, but wisdom can transform. And transformation is what women and the world are ultimately drawn to. So instead of hiding your age, wear it with pride. Every line on your face, every scar, every quiet moment of restraint, they tell a story. They show that you've lived, not just existed, that you've evolved past the need to impress. You're not invisible, you've simply become subtle. You don't flash your worth, you radiate it. And that kind of energy doesn't fade with time. It deepens. Younger men might have speed, but you have direction. They might chase excitement, but you embody meaning. That difference is everything, because meaning outlasts excitement. Presence outshines performance. So don't you dare underestimate yourself because of a number. Age doesn't make you less valuable. It makes you timeless. You've become what most men spend their whole lives pretending to be: grounded, confident, and emotionally unshakable. You've become the kind of man who doesn't need to compete, because he's already won the only battle that matters. The battle within himself. And that's why you're not invisible. You're unforgettable. There's a reason that younger women smiled at you, and it goes deeper than attraction. It wasn't just a compliment to your presence. It was a reflection of it. She saw something in you that you've stopped seeing in yourself, because most older men forget the quiet power they carry. They get so used to downplaying their worth, so used to thinking that their best years are behind them, that they no longer recognize what makes them magnetic. But she saw it instantly. The calm, the certainty, the emotional safety that radiates from a man who's done running. When a woman looks at a man like that, it's not about status or appearance. It's about ours energy recognition. Her subconscious registers something that words can't define. The presence of a man who has learned himself. You've seen life's dualities, love and loss, success and failure, connection and solitude. You've lived through enough contrast to know what truly matters, and that gives your presence a depth that's impossible to fake. She senses it. It makes her curious. It makes her drawn, because your energy feels complete. You see, the reason she smiled wasn't to flirt. It was to acknowledge. It was a silent, "I see you." Because for a moment she felt safe, she felt understood, even without a word. There's something about a man who doesn't rush, who doesn't posture, who doesn't need to prove his masculinity. He simply embodies it. You've become that man, even if you haven't fully realized it yet. It's not about dominance, it's about emotional gravity. You've reached a stage where you no longer need validation to feel alive. You don't chase approval, you don't demand attention, you don't beg for recognition. You exist in quiet alignment with yourself. That's what makes you powerful. And it's that power that draws her in, not because you're trying, but because you've stopped trying. You've mastered the art of being. Think about it. When you were younger, your energy was loud. You wanted to prove your worth, make a statement, show the world that you mattered. But now you don't need to. Life has already tested you. You've already been broken, rebuilt, and refined. And the man who walks through the fire without losing his empathy, that's the man who carries true strength. That's the version of you she's smiling at. Not the one obsessed with perfection, but the one comfortable in imperfection. Women are deeply intuitive. They feel energy long before they understand it. When she looks at you, she's not just seeing a man. She's feeling his vibration. If that vibration says peace, control, and understanding, she's drawn in. But if it says desperation, need, or insecurity, she pulls away. That's why your energy matters more than anything. And the beauty of it is, you don't have to say a word. Your silence already speaks volumes. You've probably spent years thinking that your appeal has faded, that youth has the advantage. But the truth is, your energy has matured. It's sharper, clearer, more deliberate. You've grown from a man who reacts to one who responds. You've become emotionally predictable in the best way possible. Not boring, but reliable. That reliability feels like a breath of fresh air to a woman living in a world of uncertainty. That's what her smile was. It wasn't a random moment. It was a response to stability, to calm confidence. Because real attraction isn't about flashiness. It's about feeling safe enough to open up. You give off that energy without even realizing it. She smiled because even for a second, she felt something different, something grounded, something rare. You reminded her what real masculine energy feels like when it's no longer controlled by ego. And maybe you've forgotten that part of yourself. Maybe you've been moving through life assuming no one sees you anymore, that your time to be admired has passed. But that's not true. You're being seen differently now, not as a body, but as an energy. Not as an image, but as a presency. Because when a man grows into emotional depth, his attraction doesn't fade, it evolves. It shifts from surface to soul. So the next time you catch a younger woman's smile, don't dismiss it as politeness or coincidence. Understand it for what it really is: reflection. It's life's way of reminding you that you've become the kind of man others feel safe around, the kind of man who doesn't just enter a woman's life, he steadies it. You're not being admired for what you have, but for what you are. And that is something youth can't imitate. She smiled because she recognized what you haven't yet reclaimed, that you are the calm in a chaotic world, the steady presence in a sea of uncertainty, the embodiment of experience turned into wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, it's time you start seeing yourself the way she already does.